Hello, my name is Megan Latham, and my topic is who was Pythagoras and what were his core beliefs and how did those beliefs impact philosophy today? I chose this topic basically just because I have always liked math and especially geometry in high school. And so Pythagorean theorem kind of stuck out to me, and I thought it'd be interesting to learn a little more about his life, his beliefs, and how he impacted philosophy. So who was Pythagoras? He was a Greek philosopher born sometime around 570 BC, a long time ago, in Somus, Ionia. He was known for making important developments in mathematics, astronomy, and musical theory. He was the first pure mathematician and the first to make Pythagorean theorem known, though he may not have been the first to prove it. I thought that was odd because it's named after him, but apparently there is some that believe that somebody else proved Pythagorean theorem, but he was the one that made it famous, and so it is therefore named after him. Some believe he did it. Because he lived so long ago, historians and philosophers actually know very little about his mathematical achievements and the dates and events of his life. Some things are some believe one thing, some believe another, and a third will believe something completely different. Early on, he led a highly secretive cult-like group that was half religious and half scientific. Due to that secret society, he was often presented as godlike. His main influencers were Thales and, I'm going to try and not butcher this name, Anaximander. At some point in his life, once again, very vague, a war broke out between Egypt and Persia, and he was taken as a prisoner of war in Egypt. It's very unclear how long he was held captive in English exactly, and how he obtained freedom. They just know that he eventually got free. And once he was freed, he went back to Samos, his birthplace, and founded a school there that was called the Semicircle. He then went on and founded a philosophical and religious school in Croton, now Crotone, that's how it's pronounced now, that had many, many followers. Pythagoras was the head of the society. This is the secret society with an inner circle of followers. Once again, I'm going to try not to butcher this name. They were known as the Mathematicoi, is what I'm going to call it. That's what it says to me. The Mathematicoi lived permanently with inside that society. They had no personal possessions and they were all vegetarians. So sounds like a tough way to live. They were taught by Pythagoras himself, though, and so it was a very big honor, and they obeyed very strict rules. The beliefs that the society held were that at its deepest level, reality is mathematical in nature. Philosophy can be used for spiritual purification. The soul can rise to union with the divine. I didn't know exactly how to take that one, but it was one of their core beliefs. That certain symbols have a mystical significance, and that all brothers of the order should observe strict loyalty and secrecy, which they did. Very little known about what they did. Of Pythagoras' actual work, nothing is really known because his school practiced such secrecy that of the mathematical advances that they made, it's unclear whether it was work of Pythagoras or his followers. Pythagoras was interested in the principles of mathematics, the concept of a number, a triangle, or any other mathematical figure. I'm guessing that's what led him into the Pythagorean theorem, the concept of a triangle, and the abstract idea of proof. He held a strong belief that all relations could be reduced to a number relation. He was a very gifted musician. I thought that was interesting with all of this advancements he made in philosophy and mathematics, that he also was a musician, and he made strong contributions to the mathematical theory of music. He played the lyre or lyre, I don't know which way you pronounce it, but when I looked it up, it looks kind of like a cross between a harp and a guitar. It's a Greek musical instrument though. And he played music to help heal the ill. Pythagoras believed that numbers had personalities. That's not recognized in math today, but I found this so funny because, and this might not at all be what he's talking about, but I have often thought that before too. For example, I've always thought that 9's kind of an aggressive number, whereas 7 seems a little more submissive. 8 seems a little prissy. I don't know if it's because it's like perfect and equally balanced. But I've had the same thought for, and that might not be at all what he was talking about, but that was what it made me think of. I found that connection with him. Primarily, however, Pythagoras was a philosopher, not a mathematician. And in addition to his beliefs about numbers, geometry, and astronomy, he held many philosophical and ethical teachings and beliefs. For example, the dependence of the dynamics of world structure on the interaction of contraries or pairs of opposites, the viewing of the soul as a self-moving number experiencing a form of metempsychosis or successive reincarnation in different species until its eventual purification, particularly through the intellectual life of the ethically rigorous Pythagoreans, like his followers particularly believed in this. And the understanding that all existing objects were fundamentally composed of form and not of material substance. They lost me a little bit there. Further Pythagorean doctrine identified the brain as the locus of the school, and that prescribed certain secret cultic practices. It's believed that they were basically kind of a cult. They valued friendship, unselfishness, and honesty. And they seem to have done it well because they were a tight-knit group and nobody really knows what they did. There's theories, as mentioned, they're described as being cult-like, but nobody really knows what went on and who discovered what. Then finally, in 508 BC, the Pythagorean Society was attacked. Pythagoras supposedly escaped to another area. A lot of authors say that he died there, possibly by suicide. Some say he was killed, some say that's not where he died at all. But the running consensus is that his death was sometime around 490 BC. That pretty much sums up Pythagoras' life and who he was. But what were his central beliefs? Pythagoras believed that the body and soul function together, and a healthy body required a healthy psyche. I also agree with this 100%. I've always stood by, you can go to the gym all the time and you can eat right and you can get all the sleep that you need. But if you're messed up here and your mind's not right, then are you truly healthy? Early Pythagoreans conceived of the soul as the seat of sensation and emotion, and they regarded the soul as from being distinct from intellect. I thought that was pretty interesting. A theory that the emotions that we feel aren't our brain, I guess, but our soul, and our smarts are our brain. Why were his beliefs important to philosophy today, or why are they important to philosophy today? Mainly, that all Greek philosophers, pretty much, were influenced by him and his beliefs. So that means the ones that we most know of, Plato, Aristotle, they were all derived from Pythagoras. So he, in a way, heavily impacted philosophy as we know it today, because some of the greatest philosophers were in some form or fashion influenced by him. Overall, the life and beliefs of Pythagoras, I thought, was so interesting. I did not know that he might not have been the first to prove Pythagorean theorem. That was a big bombshell. But he was the first to make it famous, which is why it's named after him. I also didn't know that he was a musician. And I did not know there was a mathematical theory to music. But once I think about it, that does absolutely make sense. I never played instruments or anything, but I did dance when I was younger, and there's 8 counts, and I know that there's a 4 count in playing an instrument, so I can see why math could come into play when orchestrating something due to the counting. I also found it very interesting that some of the most famous philosophers that we know today were influenced by Pythagoras. Even if before I've taken this philosophy class, and even before I even gave 2 thoughts to philosophy, you hear names like Plato and Aristotle. I heard Aristotle's name for the first time watching Legally Blonde. I still remember it. I remember going, who is that? And I think I even looked it up. And so those famous philosophers that we've all heard of and learned about in books and in movies, even if we haven't studied them, were influenced by Pythagoras. I also really liked that his followers valued friendship and honesty and loyalty, because those are some core values that I hold very dear to me as well. And so that concludes my presentation on Pythagoras and his central beliefs, who he was, and how he impacted philosophy. Thank you.